Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. Down in the dark, muddy water of Halifax Harbour, modern-day dredging crews keep pulling up these massive, twisted chunks of iron. The metal is heavily warped, bearing the telltale signs of intense heat and explosive stress. Historians and maritime archaeologists are almost certain these car-sized fragments belong to a French cargo ship known as the SS Mont-Blanc. To understand how those pieces got there, we have to look back to the winter of 1917. Halifax was a vital, congested assembly point for the First World War, with the harbor teeming with merchant ships, naval vessels, and supply convoys. Reaching the safety of the inner basin meant navigating the Narrows, a tight, unforgiving strait that acted as a major bottleneck for all that wartime traffic. Under normal conditions, ships carrying heavy munitions were kept far away from civilian centers. But the severe threat of German U-boats forced the military to relax those rules, pushing extremely dangerous payloads directly through the civilian waterway. On the morning of December 6th, the Mont-Blanc was carrying a terrifying payload. Below deck, the hold was packed with 250 tons of TNT and massive quantities of highly reactive picric acid. Strapped to the top deck were drums holding 246 tons of benzol, a highly volatile fuel. At the exact same time, a Norwegian vessel named the Imo was rushing to leave the harbor. Running behind schedule, the Imo sped down the wrong side of the channel, directly into the path of the incoming Mont-Blanc, and refused to yield. The ships cut their engines, but momentum carried them forward. At roughly 8:45 a.m., the two vessels collided at barely a walking pace. The Imo's prow pierced the starboard side of the Mont-Blanc, toppling the deck cargo and spilling liquid benzol right into the hold. Then the Imo reversed its engines to pull away. The grinding metal scraped together, throwing sparks into the pooling benzol. The liquid ignited immediately. What began as a slow, minor navigational error had quickly escalated. A heavily loaded munition ship was now burning out of control, right in the center of the city. The crew of the Mont-Blanc knew exactly what was beneath their feet. Surrounded by thick black smoke, they abandoned ship and rowed frantically for the opposite shore, as the flaming vessel drifted silently toward Pier 6 in the Richmond district. Ashore, thousands of citizens pressed against their windows or gathered along the docks to watch the spectacular fire. They had no idea they were staring at a floating bomb. Inside a nearby rail yard, a dispatcher named Vince Coleman learned about the explosives. Instead of fleeing, he realized an overnight passenger train from New Brunswick was due to arrive at any moment. He stayed at his desk and sent a frantic telegraph down the line to halt the train. His final message, warning that a munition ship was afire and about to explode, stopped the incoming train at a safe distance, keeping hundreds of passengers from pulling directly into ground zero. At 9:04 and 35 seconds, the fire reached the high explosives. The Mont-Blanc detonated in a blinding white flash, releasing the equivalent energy of 2.9 kilotons of TNT. Temperatures at the center of the blast hit 5,000 degrees Celsius. A pressure wave traveling at over 1,000 meters per second sheared trees, bent iron rails, and completely obliterated every structure within a half-mile radius, sending a column of white smoke 3,600 meters into the air. The sheer volume of displaced water temporarily exposed the harbor floor before violently rushing back in. The resulting 18-meter tsunami swept onto the shores, lifting the unladen Imo and washing it completely onto the Dartmouth coastline. More than 1,600 people were killed instantly by the blast, falling debris, and the collapse of buildings. In the Richmond district alone, over 1,600 homes were leveled. In a fraction of a second, an entire neighborhood disappeared. Until the atomic bombing of Hiroshima decades later, Halifax held the grim record for the deadliest man-made explosion in history. The immediate aftermath was a chaotic, burning wasteland. Dazed survivors, bleeding and covered in soot, initially assumed a German Zeppelin had dropped a bomb on the city. Then the weather turned. The very next day, a severe blizzard hit Nova Scotia, dumping 16 inches of heavy snow over the flattened ruins and stalling rescue trains in deep drifts. Rescue workers, soldiers, and surviving neighbors were forced to dig through the freezing, snow-covered wreckage with crowbars and bare hands, desperately trying to pull survivors from the ice. When the tracks were finally cleared, relief trains poured in from across Atlantic Canada and the northeastern United States. Medical personnel worked to evacuate the wounded and the newly homeless out of the disaster zone. The loss of thousands of homes left a massive population exposed to the brutal winter storm, turning an instant explosive tragedy into a prolonged, agonizing fight for survival against nature itself. In the search for accountability, local authorities initially scapegoated the surviving Mont-Blanc crew and a Norwegian helmsman. It took years of legal appeals before the Supreme Court of Canada determined that both ships shared equal blame for the navigational errors. The recovery effort physically reshaped the city. The devastated Richmond neighborhood was entirely redesigned and rebuilt as a fireproof neighborhood out of compressed cement. Yet, at the same time, the severely damaged Black community of Africville received virtually none of the donated relief funds or reconstruction support. The disaster also forced rapid advancements in medicine. The massive influx of injured children inspired arriving surgeons to pioneer the specialty of pediatric surgery in North America, and the sheer volume of eye injuries led to permanent institutions for blind care. Today, the physical scars on the city have largely healed. But down on the museum floor, those twisted, rusted pieces of iron pulled from the harbor still sit in silence. The fire burned out and the frost melted over a century ago,